Good evening, everybody, all around the world. This is worldwide tonight. We are live with another episode of That's Class. I'm James Mathewson.
I'm Craig Stewart.
Oh, fantastic. Look how streamlined we're getting at this, mate. We've got it down. And we've got a fantastic episode lined up tonight. Because I was just thinking, Craig, we've had a bank holiday weekend behind us. We've had great weather. I don't know about you, but the weather here is fantastic in Edinburgh. Is it all right for you?
It's been absolutely glorious, and maybe a little bit too good, actually, James, because the weather was nice and the beers were going down a little bit too well on Saturday. So,
are you paying for it? Are you paying for it now?
I mean, I'm over the age of 30 now, James, so I feel like the beers stick around for a little bit longer than originally intended. So, but no, it was a lovely weekend. Let's just address something straight off the bat here, James. More money has been sank into the That's Class technical department. The budget has been spread thin because we are now streaming live on Instagram. We've got people joining in the chat. It's really good to see. We're still over on YouTube for the classic viewers over there. Incredible. But yeah, so this is exciting times, isn't it?
Craig, be honest with me. Can we afford this, or are we going to have to get Nigel Farage's pals to bail us out?
Yeah, I'm open to cryptocurrency investment into That Class podcast. I will declare it though, James. I will declare it. So
well, that's important, because as long as you declare it, then I haven't got a problem. If you are a tech billionaire and you have nefarious aims of influencing the British public and politics, please reach out to us. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. And I don't know how much we would do your bidding, but Craig is spending money left, right, and center here, getting us on Instagram, getting us on YouTube, getting us across all of the podcast streaming platforms as well, like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So thank you to all our listeners who are tuning in audio only. We have got an episode tonight that is full of thrills, because while most people might think that the past week's been a little bit quiet, hasn't it, in politics? Because the 2 weeks that came before were absolutely manic. It was absolutely crazy. So it feels like things have quietened down. But in the background, I assure you, and as we're going to get into, and as you will all see soon enough, things haven't stopped. Things are, in fact, rolling along, especially when it comes to one particular by-election that all the country's eyes are focused on, and that is Makerfield.
Yeah, but just before we get to that, James, let's hold our horses a second here, because there's some congratulations in order. Okay? Because I went onto someone's Instagram just today and noticed that somebody has got a St. James's Park sized following of 52,000 followers on Instagram, which, look, in our realm, right, in with the work that we do, that's an achievement, James. So, and I don't want to take all of the credit, because, I know I'm promoting you with That Class. I don't know where you would be without it, if I'm honest.
Well, but, I'm happy to concede to that, mate. Thank you for your congratulations. But I must say, since we started doing stuff together, if I've had all of your followers come across to follow me, then that makes up for the numbers, I think. And also, since the local election coverage I did in London, between now and then, it seems to have increased rapidly. So I'm very pleased. I don't know what it means. Does it mean that I get to sell products now? Can I be an influencer? Because I have a 5-step skincare routine, which a lot of you can probably tell I'm glowing. And I'm happy to shill for anything, to be honest. I have no morals at all. So if you want to sell your, I don't know, elastic underwear, maybe Kim Kardashian could get in touch with some lip filler or so. I could try it all out. So I'm open to suggestions.
If anybody's by chance a pharmacist, because we've had the coughs over this week, and let's just say that. And actually, I tell you what, there's a thanks in order as well, because I've got the cough, my wife's got the cough, my daughter's got the cough, and I tell you what, right, I was prepping for this podcast for the last half an hour to 45 minutes, and there was the battle of bedtime was well and truly underway. So another round of applause just to my wife this time, just because at the end of the day, right, I get all of the props. We're putting to doing the podcast, but this would not be possible.
No,
this would not be possible. The clips we've got in store, just the full thing. It wouldn't
I'm
be
very pleased that we're paying credit to the true force behind that class, which is Mrs. Stewart, because without you, this would not be possible at all. And absolutely, and I mean, I think about all of you, Craig. I think about all of you parents. I was at the weekend. I came back from a lovely little impromptu break in the Lake District. A lot of people think it would be insane going to the Lake District at this time of year. It probably is. It was very busy, but it was beautiful in lots of the places. But on the way back, I stopped off at T-Bay Services, my favorite service station in the country, Craig, because they do handmade sandwiches and whatnot. And I got myself a little thing of mac and cheese, I was stretching my legs, and there was screaming children everywhere. And I thought, I'm going to hide under a bush at this picnic bench. And what happened? A family with 6 children came and sat next to me. So while I don't want to say I'm a martyr, really, but I mean, I do feel I have experienced a small portion of what it's like to be a parent.
Hangovers, James, hangovers as a parent are a different kettle of fish, I tell you. But let's not get down into that because, I mean, it wouldn't be. Yeah. What's interesting though, James, you're over in the Lake District, beautiful part of the world, but a mere stone's throw away from a certain Makerfield, not too far. I mean,
not too far. The Northwest, isn't it? And as I say to the people from the Northwest in my life very often, you all sound the same. So, even compared to us over in the Northeast, who are obviously the superior part of the North, those in the Northwest do have a lot in common with each other. But it is a big area. You're talking about Manchester, you're talking about Lancashire, Cumbria, and all of that, and Makerfield itself is a part of Greater Manchester. And that is, of course, why Andy Burnham is going down so well, supposedly, so far as the Labour candidate, because he was the mayor of Greater Manchester. So, it's very interesting. But the candidates I've been looking at, Craig, I don't know about you, I've been keeping an eye on the Reform candidate who seems to have been making the news for all the wrong reasons this week. Is that right?
Well, it looks like it to me. But honestly, man, I just feel like when it comes to these sorts of things, it's like, right, there's so many people, or is there that many people that can pick from? But you'd think, right, in such a big by-election. I mean, for those who aren't aware, I'm pretty sure most people will be aware of what's going on with the by-election in Makerfield. Andy Burnham's going at it. It's a big deal because he wants to then go and challenge Keir Starmer potentially. Rumor has it to be the next prime minister. And like with all that in mind, they throw out this guy in. Is it Peter Kenyon? Is Peter Kenyon plumber?
Rob Kenyon, I think. Rob,
not Peter. Yeah. Is Peter Kenyon a football owner of a football club? Maybe. Yeah. Anyway,
you're asking the wrong person. That
by the by, right? By the by, this guy, plumber, proper salt of the earth dude, right? In quotation marks. That's what they're pitching him as. Just this. Driving around. I mean, there was videos of Farage looking the most uncomfortable you will ever see Nigel Farage, and that's because he was sat in the front of a white van having a chat with a plumber.
He had this tweed jacket on and his tie, and he was like strapped in with the seatbelt, like just going around the roundabouts, looking like some kind of aristocrat being taken out on a shoot by some working class chap. But it's just like, I don't get the way that this has already come about, and it's Reform have made a rod for their own back, is this kind of cosplaying as working class, right? So you got Farage always does it. Richard Tice, for a man who lives in Dubai to avoid paying his taxes, and he was a banker, loves to talk about working men. It's a bit strange. It's almost like a fetishized kind of like, they've got this idea that working men's clubs are still full of men sitting with pipes and chatting about what the back shift down the pit was like, So they're like this idea that this connotation. And then Rob Kenyon comes out, he's a plumber, he's salt of the earth. And that is what they're sticking with, the story, despite the fact that some rather unsavory comments have come out from Mr. Kenyon that he said over the years, different things he said. Surprise, not the first Reform candidate to be found to have said horrible things. And of course, their line now is, well, what do you expect? He's a plumber. As we know, plumbers are famously horrific monsters who abuse other people online.
Well, let's set this up a little bit, James, right? Because there's been, I feel like this is what happens right now, where you get a candidate for a by-election or whatever it may be. I mean, all you need to do is look at Reform's councillors, right? I mean, the amount of all you need to do is look at a Reform councillor's Facebook, and the 99%. I mean, I'm not going to throw stats out. They'll probably get hunted down by the Reform legal team. But there's a lot of councillors that have had to leave their positions over Facebook posts and just whatever it is, just commenting mad stuff, right? And it's like, this day and age, what are these, like, how, there's two things, right? People sharing their opinions online and, you know, revealing their true self. That, you know, in it being things where it's either sexism, misogyny, racism, Islamophobia, all those different things, right? They're revealing themselves stupidly. And then it's, the second part of it for me is, how stupid do you need to be if you're someone that's in politics revealing those things online? So it's like there's a real error of judgment, and there's also the fact that you're a slime ball. Do you know what I mean? So there's two issues there. Yeah. But anyway,
I mean, that's the thing with them. Go on, sorry.
Well, I was just going to tee up where clip, right? Because we've got a clip, right, of one. Well, I can't remember her name now. Carol Vorderman. Carol Vorderman, who's had to come out and respond to. I've just got a comment there actually from a Jackstagram saying Peter Kenyon used to run Chelsea Football Club. So I was right. Friend of the show as well, actually, by the way.
Lovely. Is Chelsea Football Club is not one of your fan favourites? Is that right? Am I fair enough saying that correct?
No. Not. I mean, although they're welcome in the always welcome at that's class live streams, but no. So anyway, I was with Carol Vorderman has had to come out and respond to some of the comments that have been brought to light from not Peter Kenyon, Rob Kenyon. Let me play the clip. It'll give our viewers a little bit of an idea of what is actually going on with this Reform candidate in the Makerfield by-election.
You might have seen the front page of the Daily Mirror on the news this morning. And it's all about the disgusting actions of the Reform candidate in the Makerfield by-election. He's called Rob Kenyon. And over many years, he's made degrading, harassing, and vile comments about women online. So today, I am asking Rob Kenyon for an apology, an open apology, not just to me, but also to the many people he has abused online over the years. However, there are some more to add to the list which have been revealed in The Independent and other newspapers today. So, new online posts which you might not have been aware of. An account which Reform have not denied is from him, says about women and how they look. He said that English women don't care and, quote, just walk around with their fat bellies and odd shapes pushing a pram at 16 in their PJs. This is someone Reform wants to be an MP. He also said on this post, women can't referee, drive or give directions, and happily declared, I'm sexist. In a Rugby League fans forum, the same account, which again, Reform are not denying is from him. They were talking about European women, and Rob Kenyon responded to a post saying, wouldn't get me off any of those with a bazooka. Charming. He's a creep. What has Reform said? They said, oh, he's just an ordinary man making ordinary comments. No, he isn't. He's a disgusting little creep and doesn't deserve to be a member of Parliament. And Reform have form in all of this. And I'll put that all in another post. But for now, Rob Kenyon, apologise.
Yeah, Rob Kenyon, apologise.
Sorry, I was muted there because I was coughing. But yeah, I mean, it is absolutely bonkers, right, that this is what this guy thinks is acceptable, right? And he's currently a councillor as well for Reform.
That's mad. I mean, he stood previously, didn't he? He stood previously as the candidate, I think, for Parliament for them. So you know, he should have been vetted already.
there's loads of issues, right? And one of them is Reform's response to this, right? And like, because one of the comments that's come out specifically about Carol Vorderman, it was like someone else had commented a pretty awful sexual act is what they would like to do to Carol Vorderman, right? And he responded by saying, he's only saying what the rest of us are thinking. Awful, proper grim. Like Carol Vorderman said,
most of us aren't thinking of sexually harassing Carol Vorderman. Like that's the fact that these people then go, well, what do you want? This is what normal men do. Like normal men sexually harass Carol Vorderman from the TV because that's a normal thing. That's salt of the earth. And I do think, Craig, with these people, the more and more that we see it, and this might seem obvious to some people, it's not a particular revelatory thing, but I do think that the more I see this with Reform and with UKIP before them, with Farage's previous projects, they've always had people like this. Have always, most of their candidates have been absolutely insane. And then what they do is they apologize for them and they say, we'll see how bad it gets and if they need to apologize or resign. I think they're just chancing it. I think it's a part of a process of trying to make this stuff acceptable in the way that Donald Trump has over there, right? If you normalize it, the more people who are heard doing it, seen doing it, then it becomes fine. And it's almost like they're pushing that approach rather than like, I think a lot of people think, they didn't vet them properly. I think they know what these people are like. It's just that they are their people. This is their people.
Yeah, honestly. And there's another thing that really frustrates us about this, James, is that like, this is their offering, right? This is Reform's offering. And from what I've seen of this guy, the only thing he seems to be, well, there's a couple of things he's good at. One is being a creep. And the other is not offering solutions, but just pointing out problems, right? And I feel like that's what Reform are really good at, right? They'll just, and I feel like this is something that's a really common trend actually, where it's like pointing out the flaws and stuff, because the alternative to a lot of people could be them. So it's like there's that same clip of his like initial promotion video, like announcing his candidacy, was him just driving around the constituency saying, that used to be decent over there, not anymore. That used to be decent over there, not anymore. It's like, right, why don't you talk about what you actually want to do? Like, what changes do you want to make? It's
like the whole, when they go like, the high street's gone to shit, and you're like, yeah. They go, immigrants, and you're like, what? Fuck did you connect those two? Hang on a minute. The high street's gone to shit because business rates are through the roof. People cannot afford to rent somewhere. There's no support in local authorities for businesses as there once was, and for startups and for young people starting their own business. So yes, you do end up with barber shops, and yes, you do end up with vape shops, and you end up with things that actually sell and that people are buying and spending money on. The idea that has something to do with immigration, it goes back to this this theory that lots of people might not have heard of. I hope most people haven't heard of, because it's a chronically online thing amongst the far right, which is called the UK. Now that's spelled Y-O-O-K-A-Y. And it's this idea that the UK has been transformed now from what was once, I don't know, white picket fences, people digging for victory during the Second World War. They have this image of what things used to be like versus what they're now like. And they'll take like, I don't know, a suburb of London and put a photo on about litter in the street, vape shops everywhere, halal meat shops. It's all very racially coded. A lot of it is about, often diverse communities, right, with diverse shops as a result. And they'll say that somehow reflects that this once proud nation of colonists and imperialists has fallen and has been conquered by lesser peoples. And Craig, mate, it's just racist. Like, it's just like, it's the idea is that somehow white Brits were a superior race that conquered the world, and that all these other people from other countries came here, diluted that, made it worse, and now the country's shit. Racist. Like, plain and simple. And if you don't think it's racist, you need your head looking at.
Well, just to go back to the high street thing, James, right? First of all, so I used to live in Hartlepool, right, for a little bit. That place, you've got boarded up shop windows. You've got like old beautiful buildings, that just like are just basically abandoned. That is because the place was deindustrialized. All of the jobs for the people of Hartlepool and the surrounding areas were just absolutely decimated. Steel mills were closed down. Steelworks were closed down. Shipbuilding, whatever, it was decimated, right? So people didn't have any money to spend there, or they were moving away from the area, whatever it was. But I've got a real theory, right, when it comes to high streets, and it's this: the two things that tend to thrive really on the high streets are takeaways and barber shops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two things that Amazon can't deliver.
That's true. I've never thought about it like that. Amazon can't cut my hair yet, but you're absolutely right. That's exactly it. And isn't it funny
Amazon
saying
kebab
like
shops.
funeral directors don't seem to be closing down either? And why is that? People's hair keeps growing and people keep dying. And they're two businesses that will never shut down. But you're right about the takeaways as well. Even from Deliveroo, that's kind of helped those takeaway shops, if anything. But even more and more now, I'm seeing businesses on Deliveroo and all of the other apps in my local area are operating out of what's called ghost kitchens, where it'll be basically somebody with a kitchen somewhere that they then set themselves up on Deliveroo and all the apps, and the deliveries just come and pick them up. You couldn't go in and eat. You couldn't go in and order at a kind of counter. There's nothing like that. It's just about the delivery service. So you're absolutely right. Of course, that's part and parcel of why the high streets died. The only way you get around that is by creating incentives at local government and other places to counteract that. And we saw a bit of that during COVID, with the Eat Out to Help Out, still, I think, one of the most unfortunately named government schemes ever. Not sure anyone in Rishi Sunak's team had particular experience of why that was a problem, and maybe that's why it passed them by. But you saw the fact that we can do that at certain times. But if we're serious and we don't just want to point at problems like Reform do, then you got to look for investment. Now, I must say, Andy Burnham, whether people like it or not, he has done that in Manchester. He's been someone who's seen to have a bit of a vision and a track record of delivering policy that actually transforms Manchester. Because Manchester is the place in Europe right now with the most active cranes. Did you know that? And that's
wow.
Because,
wow.
There you go. Listen, I bring you all of the facts. I bring you all of the autistic facts that no one asked for. But it has the most active cranes in Europe because they are building loads of stuff in Manchester and it's expanding rapidly.
Yeah, big fan of Manchester, definitely. And now that I know there's so much crane activity,
you'll be there. You'll be there.
I'll be absolutely. What's interesting as well, though, James, right? When you're talking about the high streets and stuff, and it's like, it's not as if high streets in really diverse areas are suffering more than high streets in non-diverse areas. Like, I live up in Northumberland, and like, it's not a particularly diverse place. I mean, there's pockets that are, but the struggles all the same. And I was actually thinking about this just this week, right? Why is it? So people are going to reform and restore. It's actually worth discussing restore a little bit later if we've got the time. Yeah. But I'll go into those because they've got issues with immigration, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, right, immigration's a problem in the UK, whatever. And I understand how people get there, right? I understand how people get to that thinking that's the issue. It's not, by the way, for clarity. Mm-hmm. But why is it that it's places like Sunderland and Middlesbrough and Hartlepool and deindustrialized northern towns and cities that are going there, and they're not particularly diverse? So you would think it was the places that were diverse and where, white British people were having to live alongside people from, I don't know, Afghanistan and Syria, but it's not. No, so what is the problem? Is it immigration, or is it the fact that, Thatcher sold off all industry and focused on banks and got rid of all of the industrial jobs, and we got left with pretty much nothing up north? Yeah. So which one of those two things is it? And I'm pretty sure it isn't immigration, because wherever people are living alongside immigrants, it seems to be getting on all right from what I can tell.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, mate. I think it's even more kind of prescient to look at this in the way that you've pointed out there. Those communities that don't have the experience of diversity or multiculturalism are the ones that are the easiest to scare about it, right? That fear of the unknown is a very common fear. Now, if you're able to say, everything you've got, everything you like is going to be taken away, it's under threat, I think a lot of those communities know they aren't diverse already, so they notice anyone who moves into the area who isn't of their skin color, their creed, their religion, whatever it be, and they focus on it more. And then secondly to that, they also think that there is some kind of conspiracy because those are, areas like London, areas like Luton, Bradford, wherever, where multiculturalism was a factor from the 60s onwards, that those areas are now getting too full and that it's now their area is going to become like that rural Northumberland is suddenly going to become urban, and it's a very strange connection. But I'll tell you now, from my own family, from experiences growing up in Northumberland, I know that the biggest fear was fear of the unknown. The second that you break down that barrier and you actually have a conversation with somebody in a different community or a different, who has a different quality of life or a different background to you, then you're not scared anymore because you can personalize it. We see that with trans people. We see it with everything, and there's a reason why the MAGA movement in America and the Reform and Restore movements here in the UK will use that as a fear-mongering tool, because didn't think I'd be quoting H.P. Lovecraft's great monstrous villain Cthulhu here for you, but fear is the oldest human emotion. And you can, you can look at it in every successful divisive political movement throughout history has used fear.
That was beautiful, James. That was truly beautiful. But no, just one more thing on the high streets, right? Because there's so much focus on high streets are struggling. I get it, they are. But when you go to the likes of Whitechapel and Bethnal Green, which I've spent a bit of time in because there's an office there which I'll go to every so often, and it's like they're bustling communities, right? Yeah. They're bustling communities. They're examples of high streets that are doing well. But guess what? It's a highly dense area of immigrants, right? Yeah, totally. And what you find is actually that they seem to be revitalizing and bringing these areas back up. It's the west end of Newcastle. Same things. People don't like it because it's not white. That seems to me that's what the problem is. It's beautiful. You can see all these different shops and there's culture there. There's life. There's things happening. People are shaking and moving. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The markets are on, all those different things. But people don't like it because it's not meat and two veg cafe and whatever it is that you want to, I don't know, knitting and sewing shop. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, that's what I can't other than time changing and industry changing and all of that, I can't see what people would like to see on their high street. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what what the actual British psyche is around the high street. Is it like little independent shops? Because if it is, you're gonna have to get rid of business rates. You're gonna have to do something about that, because you cannot be making enough money selling your own handmade things or selling stock that you buy in. You can't make enough money to pay, $2,000 a month business rates on top of $2,000 a month rent. You go, where are you gonna get that money from? And then pay yourself. It's impossible, let alone employing someone. You're not gonna be able to do that on top of it. So no jobs. And then on top of that, we don't seem to like chains and out-of-town retail parks, when that's the land they can buy, they can build their shop, and then those places seem to give people jobs, albeit I'm not convinced high-quality jobs a lot of the time, differs from shop to shop. But, I just don't know what that vision is. It all seems to be based around, as the MAGA movement in America is with Trump, this idea that there was once a great nation, there was once something that existed. And I can't, if you ask somebody who says that to point to a particular point in time, and then you ask them about the issues that existed then, for example, they'll say, well, I don't know, like the 1920s. And you're like, what, during the Great Depression? They're like, well, no, the 1940s. Oh, what, during a global conflict and the rise of fascism? No, maybe the 1950s. All right, the post-war boom where you had a Labour government. Oh, no, not that. So people's idea of the past isn't just rose-tinted glasses. I think it's built on a real desperation to try and get back to something, a nostalgia that maybe never existed.
Yeah, and I think it's a very, very good point to be made there, James. But I just it just seems to me that it's a very similar story to what we're going through with pubs. Massive part of communities, massive part of British culture. If we want to dive into British culture, pubs are a big part of that. And it seems to me, and I confess, when they close down, I'll complain, but use it or don't complain when it's gone, because it is one of those things. maybe that's a bit harsh because maybe people want to use it but just can't afford to go down and pay £5 plus for a pint. I know there'll be people, people will be absolutely over the moon for a £5 pint down in London these days.
Mate, I thought
that's
the
a
other week,
bargain, isn't it? But
the other week I saw an advert for cheapest pint in Vauxhall, and it was £7.20 or something like that. And it was advertised as like a bargain. So, but you're absolutely right. I think people, and I'm the same. Look, I want to see things that exist that aren't just profitable. Is it realistic? I don't know, but this is why I don't like, and this is why it's interesting seeing the journey that the far right and the right wing of British politics have been on. Because at one time, the Tory party was captured by people like Margaret Thatcher, who were free market capitalists, right? The free market governed everything. If your business cannot make money, it was a very cold and very, kind of unfeeling approach, if you like. But it was like, if you can't make money or profit, you don't have the right to exist. So their argument would be that those pubs shouldn't exist because they can't make money and therefore there's no point in them existing. I don't want to see that really for my communities. I would like to see things that exist for public good. And I know that sounds like typical kind of lefty, like, oh, we're all kind of singing Kumbaya and we're all, I know that it's not a utopia that I'm after, but I do see, communities often raising community purchase orders and buying pubs that matter to them and being owned by the community. I was just in the Lake District, and that community bought a mountain in Blencathra. They bought a mountain so that property developers and other people couldn't buy it and keep people off the land. So there are ways to do this. I just think community itself has been devastated by Thatcherism in this country. And that is one of the biggest factors. And that was people like Nigel Farage. That was people like Richard Tice and Rupert Lowe, people who were bankers and who were strong Thatcherites in the 80s. They loved that idea, getting rid of community, focusing on the individual, right? You don't keep your back door open at night anymore. You build a fence, you build a wall. All of that stuff that is about the individual, never mind other people, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Everyone looks after themselves. And after, decades of that kind of thinking, unfortunately, we've arrived at a point where then people look around and say, well, I've got no community left.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, what you mentioned about the community purchase and orders. I'm sure there was an example of that up in Rothbury in Northumberland, where there were a massive estate went up and they were wanting to purchase it just to protect it for like nature and conservation and all those different bits and pieces. But yeah, I feel like that was we've gone on a bit of a run there, to be fair, James. I mean, we went through cranes, we went through high streets, we've gone community pubs. But I want to pull us back just a little bit to Makerfield, right? Because there's some really juicy stuff hotting up between the sort of political divide of left versus right and everything in amongst. Because I'm intrigued, right? I'm intrigued to see what you think about tactical voting, James. Hot topic at the minute, right? Really, and like I said, I'm intrigued to see what you think, because there's a lot to be said at the minute about the conversation of should the Greens be putting up a candidate, and then to challenge Andy Burnham. There's also a similar conversation going on the right with Reform and Restore. So obviously we've discussed the Reform candidate, but for those who aren't aware, there's someone outflanking Nigel Farage on the right of politics, and it's his old friend and nemesis Rupert Lowe, who's further right. So like now, in some strange technicality, Nigel Farage is on the left of the far right, which is a very interesting situation. But basically, from what I can see, James, with that whole Reform Restore thing, essentially what's happening is Restore are doing to Reform what the Greens are doing to Labour, and they're sort of picking off voters from that side who want Nigel Farage to go further on immigration, to go further against Islam, to go, and to be stronger on all of these different issues, where Nigel Farage, people are sort of cottoning on to the idea that actually they are just the same Tories who got us in the trouble over the last 14 years. He's filled his party full of them. And a lot of those people are then going, okay, no, actually, this Rupert Lowe fella, who actually fell out with Nigel Farage, there's a whole character arc story to go through there, isn't there? But yeah, interesting. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that sort of setup where we are with Makerfield? Should people be voting for Labour despite being a typical Green voter? Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Well, me and Rupert have a little bit of history, so I'm not speaking from a non-biased point of view. We've knocked 10 bells out of each other on debates 4 times, and then his chief of staff now, his kind of head of this political party that he's formed, is a guy called Charlie Downs, and we've done 4 debates together as well. So that was quite, I knew from the start with these people, even when Rupert was standing for reform, that he was a very particularly type, he was a particular type of right wing. Even from like the Tories that were coming into the Reform Party, I knew that they would bash heads, because Rupert Lowe is unapologetically an ethnic nationalist. And Rupert, if you're watching, I hope you are. I'm sure he's an avid subscriber to That's Clap. Rupert, you can try and sue me again for saying that, but you are, mate. He's an ethnic nationalist. He believes that Britain is. Were you about to ask me what to do? Yeah, I'll break it down. So ethnic nationalism is where you believe that one group of people, should live in one country, that one country has a set ethnic group, and that country should prioritize. They don't always say just that country, should just be that. A prime example of an ethno-nationalist state is Israel, where it is, a country that is for the Jewish people. That's its belief, its identity. Of course, not all Jewish people agree with that around the world. But Britain, in the eyes of people like Rupert Lowe, is a white Christian nation. That's their idea. Now, that's news to my ancestors, Craig, in North Northumberland, who came here with Norse paganism and rejected Christianity and brought their own culture here from Europe, as is it's different, I'm sure, the people who came with the Norman Crusade, the Roman invasion, the Beaker folk who came here before that, all of the Celts who came from the Iberian Peninsula in Spain. I'm sure that's not the vision they see of Britain, but it is a very narrow, particular subset of British culture as they see it. It's about white people going to church on Sunday, and that existed in Britain from around the 1700s onwards. So it's like as young as America is, really, as a worldview. So, I don't see it as anything. I mean, I see it as racist, is what I see it as, because they don't like other, cultures or creeds or skin colors. But they walk this line between being out and out racist and, saying they don't like brown people and saying that this is our homeland. And unfortunately, that gets traction with a lot of people who don't know otherwise.
Yeah, and I think what they're the England squad going to the World Cup this summer would look very, very different under a Rupert Lowe manager. Yeah. Let's say he got the England job, not Prime Minister, but he was the England coach. It would be.
Well, he did have a football background, and he was the chairman of Southampton. I believe.
He was. Oh my God. Yeah. Do you know what it is, James? Right. I'm sick to death of this conversation about who can be English, what does it mean to be British? When did we get so fragile? I genuinely love so much about this country. I love everything. It's like things, the art it's produced, the music, the film, the actors, the actresses, like the fact that I'm raising a family in it and it's a beautiful place. I've got brilliant childminders, like everything. It supports such a fantastic way of life. And that's what British culture is, right? That's what culture is, is way of life. So naturally it exists. But when did we get so fragile as to have to start panicking about, oh, hang on, there's not going to be white people living everywhere. Yeah. Who cares?
It's insane. It's weird.
You are who you are. Celebrate it. That's great.
It's very weird though, mate. It's really weird. And they talk about diversity of things. One of the people who I did a debate with from Restore said that people with Geordie accents shouldn't be on the media, right? So what is it? Hang on, what part of white Britain do you want? You don't want Geordies, you don't want northern people, you don't want working class voices, you don't want all this stuff. But at the same time, you don't want brown face, you don't want black. What they want is, mate, they want bloody Pride and Prejudice. They want Bridgerton. They want people like Rupert Lowe, plum-mouthed toffs, to be able to rule over everyone again. They want a feudal Britain where Rupert says, well, you've not reached your grain quota this month, Craig. It's 16 lashes in front of the village, I'm afraid, in the town square. This is their like fantasy world that they live in. But it ties very strongly to a lot of the MAGA stuff in America because they see their heritage is coming from here and from white Brits in Europe, what are often called WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, which is what let's not forget, the KKK, do you remember them? What they based their entire identity on. So it's all racially charged. It's absolute nonsense. But is it good news for us, Craig, on the left and for progressives? Because ultimately, Restore, right, get this, in the latest polling for the Makerfield by-election, Restore are polling at 7%, right? Not much. They'll not win the seat, thank God. Reform are the biggest threat. But who is voting for Restore and who would they otherwise vote for? It's only Reform, right? So that 7% is being taken away from Reform. And just as the Greens could potentially take away enough percentage from the Labour Party to stop from Andy Burnham from winning the seat, the same could happen on the right, which I think would be good news for us. Of course, it doesn't bode well that 7% of people in Makerfield think Rupert Lowe is a good choice. And it does scare me about things like proportional representation in the future, because, you know, you could have out-and-out Nazis winning votes because people want to vote for them. But that is where we stand. The remarkable thing, and I say this as an avowed Tory basher myself, even though we've forgotten about the Tories, you know, that they seem to be old news now. They are polling at 3% in this by-election. And Restore, not even the main right-wing party, are polling at 7%. That's shocking, like, absolutely shocking.
It's out there. That is crazy. Do you know what it is, though, James? It just breaks my heart that these people who think that Reform and Restore, that Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, the working class are putting working class people first, that they care about working class people. They couldn't care less. And genuinely, that is one of the biggest drivers as to why I do what I do, is to try and just make people realize that, like, these people don't care about you. They don't care about you. Labour's done a lot of things wrong.
The movement that got you and I into politics, the trade union movement, right, was born fighting against these people. These were the overseers. These were the factory owners, right? If you're in Lancashire, these were the mill owners. These were the people who owned the mills. And your child got chewed up in one of these machines and was disabled for the rest of their life and couldn't work, and you couldn't work and you couldn't look after them and they died of illness and all the rest of it. And people like Rupert Lowe said, don't really care, I'm making money, right? Because that was the world that they wanted. They advocated for no workers' rights. If you think they're going to advocate for your workers' rights, right? If you're a plumber like Rob Kenyon and you think that you're going to get somehow supported by people like Farage and by Rupert Lowe because you're white and they're going to throw all the other workers under the bus, just remember, look around yourself. Who do you have more in common with, right? Do you have more in common with, you know, somebody from a Southeast Asian community and family who is also a worker on the same wage as you? Or do you have more in common with somebody like Farage who gets handed £5 million as a free gift from somebody who barely knows him, apparently? I'm sorry, you have far more in common with each other, regardless of skin color. I thought we all realized that years ago.
I mean, you've just said exactly how I feel about all of that, James. I have got a question. I'm going to touch on one thing about the Labour Greens tactical voting situation as well, look, because I understand. How do I phrase this? If I needed to tactically vote to keep someone like Nigel Farage out, I would. Where I have the problem is I really don't like telling someone to vote. So I do it myself. I struggle with the bit of, I think you should vote for Labour, despite you being, say, a Green Party member, to keep Nigel Farage out. Because it's difficult because on paper, you should just vote for who you want to be in power. But in this particular situation in Makersfield, where by all accounts, it looks like Greens are not going to win the seat. Yeah, they could get. I mean, bear in mind, this is just based off one smallish poll as well. So everything that we're saying is with a pinch of salt, right? But let's say that it is accurate. So because it's all we've got to go off right now. It doesn't look very likely that Greens are going to do what they did in Gorton and Denton Andy Burnham has a very strong chance of keeping Reform out and keeping Robert Kenyon out. So, should the Greens bite the bullet? If you would vote Green and just think, okay, in this scenario, it would be better that Andy Burnham got in than it would be the creep that is Robert Kenyon. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, James?
Difficult one, isn't it, mate? And I'm going to lose friends all over the place with what I'm about to say, because we don't, on the left, we're not good at cooperation, really. We're good at being in our own
compromise.
Exactly. And I've got a friend who was asking me at a recent election very much that same question. Do I vote to try for what I want, which is Green? I want Green. Or do I vote for the SNP or someone like that? It's gone to try and keep Reform out. And ultimately, they had the best of both worlds, because their advice was, in the tactical voting website, was Green. So they were able to vote for what they wanted. But I was going to suggest, SNP or something like that, because apparently they had a better chance. Turns out the Greens end up winning it. So who am I to tell you that they're not going to win? The problem is with something like Makerfield, what's on the line here is so much more than just the representation for that seat. It's, Andy Burnham is very vocally saying that a vote for him is a vote to change the Labour Party. So he's clearly coming for Keir Starmer, as Starmer knows. And I'm sure there's been a conversation there as well. But ultimately, you have to decide, don't you? If you want the mainstream, and I'm sorry to anyone on the left who really doesn't like this, I don't like it at times. But the Labour Party is the mainstream progressive party in British politics. Now, I can hear the screaming from here from some of my followers saying that they're not progressive. I understand that. They haven't been progressive recently. The reality is that they are the political wing of the Labour movement. And the Labour movement is much bigger than the Labour Party. It's the trade unions. Now, you might not think all the trade unions are progressive. That's fine. But what they are is democratic, right? And they are part of a wider movement where people pay their subs and their fees each month, and they get representation. And that representation protects their rights at work. It protects their rights even as immigrants and citizens, all of that stuff. So I still see the Labour Party as being the likely thing that can govern and can coalesce itself. The problem is when it shifts away from any values, as it has done under Keir Starmer and has done previously as well. The answer to that is not to swing completely in the opposite direction. We had the Corbyn leadership. I was involved in the party under that. I will tell you how many mistakes were made because of the obsession with being ideologically left-wing and doing everything through that, guys. Completely wrong way to do it. Andy Burnham is someone I think can meet that in the middle, but can also communicate, can likely get elected or re-elected, but also recognizes the need to change things. Now, the criticisms will be, well, he was part of the Blair governments previously. Yeah, he was. There's nobody in the Labour Party who was untouched by that. And then the biggest criticism I'm hearing at the moment is Andy Burnham's a Zionist. I don't believe he is a Zionist. I think we've gotten a little bit away from the reality of things here when we're calling people Zionists, right? I am passionately pro-Palestinian. Right, I abhor the Israeli government. Because of my broadcast work, I'm banned from traveling to Israel. The Israeli government has put me on a list and banned me. I, take no pleasure in being an ally of Israel at all. I don't think this country should be selling arms to Israel. Do I think Israel shouldn't exist? No, it already exists. That's beyond my influence and beyond the government's influence. The country exists. Do I think we would be able to reform our alliance with Israel? Yes. And I think, in the future, the Israeli people hopefully will vote, hopefully this year, for a different kind of government, because they have a far-right government at the moment, and that's horrible. But do I think Andy Burnham is a committed pro-Israeli, activist Zionist? No, I don't think so. I think what he's doing is trying to walk a line of electability with communities in Britain that are divided on this subject. I think he's clever to do that. The Greens don't need to do that, right? Because they're not trying to govern from a coalition. They don't need to win Jewish seats in London and, pro-Muslim seats in Bradford. They don't need to do that because they're happy with their lot, right? And they'll get more through a reformed system. But I do think in the interest of plurality and democracy, people should be able to vote however they want. So long answer short, Craig, I'm no further forward with what I think people should do than you are. I think people should follow their heart. I think in an ideal system, people should be able to vote however they want, and then that works out well. In our current system, however, I think if you're trying to stop Labour from having a chance at reforming itself and seeing what that looks like, and trying to stop Nigel Farage, then I think that's probably an error as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough state of affairs, isn't it? It's a tough state of affairs because, I mean, does anybody want to see this guy? Bearing in mind what we've just spoken about, the first chunk of this podcast is all of the bad behavior of this Rob Kenyon, and things just coming out of the woodwork, left, right, and center. But what sort of guy this is sexist, a self-proclaimed, and this isn't even just my opinion. He's self-labeled himself a sexist. Yes, it's on Facebook comments, but I'm not being funny. Even if it was a joke, right? Even if you just by joke said, "Yeah, I'm a sexist" on a Facebook comment, after saying all of those different things about women can't drive and women can't be referees and the weird, creepy comments and stuff, like, is it a particularly funny joke? Like, it just doesn't seem like the salt of the earth. And the way Reform have come out and sort of said, "Oh well, boys will be boys." That's basically their defense of it is crazy.
That is their defense, isn't it? Primarily, is that they're just saying this is what working class men do. I'm a working class man. You're a working class man, Craig. Do we do that? No. And I tell you what, right? It's quite a nice little segue actually into our star of the week, because I feel like our star of the week this week is the polar opposite, the complete polar opposite to Robert Kenyon. Nice.
I will roll VT, James. If when on the other side of it, feel free to introduce our star of the week, but I will cue us up. Roll VT.
Nice.
Star of the week, presented by That's Class.
This week's star of the week is an inspiration, I think, more than just a star, and has been for a little bit of time now. It's Giselle Pellicot, and Giselle Pellicot never asked for the spotlight. Giselle Pellicot never wanted to be a star and inspiration. Giselle Pellicot was just a woman living in France who found out in the most life-destroying and devastating way that her husband, a lifelong husband, who she had children with, had been drugging her and raping her, and not only that, but had been inviting other men to do so. I believe hundreds of men. I can't remember the total number or statistic, but she took all of them men to court who had been named, and her husband. And in a grueling trial, an absolutely grueling trial, she faced them all down. And her mantra throughout that whole process was shame must change sides. And we can see there, this is that mantra. And she's written a book that she's put out about this, about her ordeal. And her comment on it is straightforward, and I think it's one we can all get behind, which is that rape is never the victim's shame, and that shame has to shift. She as well, the reason we've made her the star of this week particular is she was just interviewed by Kathy Newman, previously at Channel 4 News, who's now at Sky News doing the flagship politics show. Kathy, in her own right, is a phenomenal kind of feminist figure. You might remember Nigel Farage said to her recently, "Listen, love, you're trying ever so hard," when she was asking him about Russian donations. So Giselle Pellicot was interviewed, and in that interview, she talked about the case that is in the news this week of 3 teenage boys in Britain who have been spared jail after being found guilty of raping 2 teenage girls. They were given community service orders rather than prison custodial sentences, and she was clear about that it's an outrage and that they should be in prison. And I agree. So Giselle Pellicot is star of the week.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic nomination. And you know what my take is straight off the back of that, James? Right, the thing that just jumps out to me, first being, she waived her right to anonymity, right, during all of that. She could have just gone and hidden away, but just came out, and she's now a fierce supporter and advocate for the safety of women and children. But what she's done this week, right, is something that people fail to do time and time again in this country. And I'm looking at some very specific people who organise some pretty big events in United Kingdom rallies. And she showed support for the victims. She came out and supported the victims and said that they should be proud of themselves, and and was giving them props, said never be ashamed. All of those, like what a mantra is. Shame must change sides. Very much was practicing what she preached, and that's what she did. She came out and supported them. And it just, with this stench of United Kingdom still in the air around this country, right? Still there, still lingering.
Yeah.
Where was the outrage for these two poor girls who were abused multiple times by all accounts and have had to go through this horrendous ordeal, right? And you know why? You know why there hasn't been riots? You know why there hasn't been any kickoffs? Because we don't know the immigration status of the lads who did it. And it's as simple as that.
Exactly.
It is as simple as that.
Where's Tommy Robinson? Where's Stephen Yaxley Lennon? Where are they, outside court? Where we've previously seen them say, oh, I'm not afraid of, perjury. I'm not afraid of standing in front of a court and leaking information. Where are you then? Where have you been when these boys were being let off with the most heinous crime? Which these people always talk about, not just even custodial sentences. They talk about deporting people, understandably, who are found guilty of such horrific crimes, but they only care when it aligns with their ideology. And because of that, that's why we see Nigel Farage standing beside Conor McGregor. That's why we see him stand next to Andrew and Tristan Tate, right? These men who are rapists. Donald Trump, one of the most prominent, I would say the most prominent rapist in the world right now, because he holds the highest office. And again, any of these people are welcome to sue us. Any of these people are welcome to take me, and that's classed to court. But in court, they would have to prove that they're not rapists, and all of them have been proven to be rapists in civil court. So I'm sorry, this idea that you suddenly give a shit about victims and about white girls, because that's all they ever talk about is young white women, right? When the biggest threat to young white women, and indeed all women, is men. And it's regardless of skin color, it's regardless of religion or background. It is men who are the problem. And Giselle Pellico rightly points that out and says that we should be on the victim's side regardless.
James, if people cared about the victims, right, you wouldn't be going to a Tommy Robinson march. You'd be campaigning with Rape Crisis.
Yeah.
You'd be doing that sort of work. Like, surely something in your mind. You've got an organization, and we probably mention them every single week at this rate, right?
Yeah.
But Rape Crisis are specifically set up to support the victims. Tommy Robinson is specifically set up to weaponize abuse and to focus on the abusers, right? There's two very different things.
You've got that choice. You go and do a half marathon for Rape Crisis, or you do a fundraising event for them and you make money for Rape Crisis, and then they disseminate that to their services, right? And you're helping rape victims. Or you go to Tommy Robinson's event, or you do one of his fundraisers and you help him go on fucking holiday in Spain again, or you help him buy his next bag, his next gram that he shoves up his nose and gets absolutely off his nut with all of his pals. And I'm afraid there is absolutely night and day between them. If you want to help victims of rape and sexual assault, fantastic. It's endemic. It is happening everywhere on earth. It's horrific. We must tackle it. You're not going to do it by funding Tommy Robinson's coke habit. So instead, why don't you take a long look at your life, stop going on the marches, stop painting your face with the Union Jack, and instead do some work in your community, help rape crisis services, help those frontline services that are supporting victims. It's quite simple.
And do you know what else hasn't really been pointed out around this case, where, if people haven't seen it, it was in Hampshire, and essentially, I think it was three teenage lads had abused two girls. These are separate incidents. There was video evidence. It went to court, and it got, I think, they avoided prison. They got whatever it was, different. But the long and short of it was that they didn't get prison, right? And what hasn't been really taken from that is that there's a very, very frightening statistic out there. And Rape Crisis of I don't know if they did the research, but they certainly push it, that 97% of reported cases of rape in the UK do not end in a charge a prosecution for the perpetrator.
Yeah.
So basically, what that means is, if you or I, obviously that's never going to be the case, were to rape someone, there's at least a 97% chance that we wouldn't get prison time for it or get a charge.
It's insane.
And you tell me we're not a country that normalizes the abuse of women.
And then you're talking about Afghanistan being a problem for women. Of course, the Taliban are a problem for women. I don't think we're any better. I don't think women are safe anywhere. I don't think any woman feels safe anywhere where men are, because there is always a risk. It's like the old thing, I know it's cliche to say now, but it's a very commonly used analogy that, if you've got a bag full of snakes and I say to you, one of them's poisonous, but don't worry, the other 20 aren't. Just stick your hand in the bag. You're not going to do it, are you? Like, it's that straightforward. So I do think, it circles back around nicely to our narrative when we're talking about Star of the Week with Giselle Pellico, but then also to Carol Vorderman earlier. She's speaking out against our own sexual harassment by these men, because that's where they go to, mate. That's the first thing they say. To somebody like Carol Vorderman, a prominent TV personality who over the years has, been on Countdown, been on various programs, and she's saying, oh, I want to stand up for the plight of refugees. I want to stand up for progressive politics. And they're coming back to her with sexual harassment and threats of rape and all the rest of the horrific stuff she deals with. So why on earth would those men then all of a sudden care about the plight of rape and sexual assault victims? Because they're projecting. And I know we say this every week, but they're projecting their own horrific views onto people. And then people like Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, they're monetizing it by normalizing it and trying to create that as our mainstream politics. We fight against that wherever we can, as we do here on this podcast and as we do everywhere else we can with your work online and my work in media and stuff. But honestly, mate, I think it, unfortunately, the more that they push to try and normalize this, the harder we're going to have to push in the other direction. People like Giselle Pellico, I'm just grateful that there are still journalists and people like Kathy Newman who will have them on and who will give them the spotlight and the platform that they deserve.
And James, you mentioned something there. You said, we probably mention it every week. You know what it is? We do keep getting on this conversation, but I'm glad and I'm proud that we are, because I think it's important with all of the conversation around immigration, all the what's really interesting actually, that there's two things that get focused on when it comes to women's safety, right? It's trans and it's immigration.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, can we just focus on the fact that, like I just mentioned, there's 75,000 reported cases of rape, and 97% of them didn't end in a charge.
Exactly.
Why don't we focus on that? Because like the fictitious trans woman that's coming into the fictitious man posing as a trans woman coming into the bathroom is not the big issue right now.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to make out. They're trying to make out that and you know what it is? I'm really, really proud of my mom, because the WI made them all state what their sex was or the gender was at birth, because a trans woman not allowed in WI anymore, and she left.
Really?
Her friends left the WI. Now they have their own little meetings where everyone's welcome. And I'm so proud of her for that.
That's incredible. She should be so proud of herself, because that's not jamming Jerusalem, is it? Excluding people who want to be involved in your community. My mum was in the WI, before she died. Her and all her sisters were in the WI. They loved it, in North Northumberland as well. I have no doubt she would have done the same thing, because that's not how we roll. That's not inclusive. And listen, if you think, right, when you've just highlighted there statistically how easy it is to get away with raping someone in this country, right? Because you're unlikely to face charges, let alone prison time. If you think that then someone is going through the bother of dressing up and pretending to be a trans woman to infiltrate women's spaces to get away with it, when they don't need to do that, clearly by the statistics, they can just do it and face, no actions to their consequences. What on earth world are you living in? What mental gymnastics are you doing to be like, well, this might be the... Why don't you focus on the actual rapists, the men who are raping women regardless of how they're dressed up or how they're presenting? Because I'll tell you now, that all the trans women I know are absolutely terrified right now, as are trans men, because their status is being eroded and thrown away. And again, the same as immigrants, the same as refugees, being done in the name of protecting women and children. And I'm sorry, it's just not the reality we face. So I do think, it's a good circular point for us to close off on, Craig, because we do talk about it every week. It comes around, but that's because it's still happening every week. And the more that reform and restore, and all these people who try and divide us over gender, they divide us over immigration status, the one thing they won't ever talk about, the divide, is the divide between rich and poor. And that is what we like to talk about here on That Class.
Just one last thing on that, though, before we finish off on it, is like, because I had this thought come in my head, I need to get it out there, is that, you put yourself in the shoes of a woman walking home from a night out, right? And you see a shadowy figure walking behind you. Do you think that woman gets great relief when they see a white man instead of a man with darker skin? Do they think that, like what? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I just can't really wrap my head around that scenario, of like how they think that, women's safety hinges on the immigration status or the religion that they follow. It's just bonkers.
Yeah. Again, why are we surprised when this is clearly a party of people who not only don't care about women, but I would say actively dislike them? A lot of the people who, especially on the Restore side of things, you've had a lot of the Charlie Downs, who I used to debate on there, is a very, very angry young man and likes to talk about how women aren't breeding enough for men and aren't accepting men enough and all the rest of this like kind of incel coded Elon Musk nonsense about women. I just think the answer is simple, chaps. We need to bring back the monasteries for you. I think if you all go, because you all love God, you all like things like, hanging out with the boys all day and no women being around. And I think really it'd be great if you all just fucked off to monasteries with closed walls around them. And you and Andrew Tate can do sit-ups and chin-ups and stuff all day long, brew some ale. And we don't have to deal with you in society. That would be great.
Oh, God, honestly, James, it's just so difficult, isn't it? But shall we segue onto our... Because actually, I know normally we finish on Star of the Week, but we've still got our Nonsense of the Week to get into. So,
and I think our Nonsense of the Week this week is a bit more light-hearted than sometimes it is previously.
Yes.
So I think
we want our nonsense to be real nonsense, and here it is. Nonsense of the Week. Here we go, James. And our Nonsense of the Week this week is it's a corker of a story, actually. I'll play the VT. I'll play the video that popped into our feeds this week, and here it is.
I don't want to go to court. I don't want to go to magistrates. I don't want to go to Crown Court because this is what they're saying, and it's going to cost around about £20,000, which is absolutely ridiculous over a plastic monkey at the end of the day, which it is really, innit? So if I have to take it down, I have to take it down. It's not harming anyone. It's plastic. It's not real. I'm not stupid. It's just a plastic gorilla. People need to get a life.
It's an absolute corker, isn't it? It's an absolute corker. I mean, I don't quite know where to start with that one, James. But what's your first take on the gorilla on the house?
Look, it's not my decor style, perhaps. I do have a personal connection to this. I confessed to my two best friends years ago that Peter Jackson's King Kong was my favorite film of all time. I've been routinely mocked for that choice consistently for years, to a point where last Christmas I was sent about 10 different gorillas of different shapes and sizes in the post for Christmas. So I know what it's like to be haunted by a gorilla, but I wouldn't put one on the outside of my house like that. But look, it's a free country. I think people should be able to decorate however they like. The fact that her neighbors seem to be outraged by it is quite interesting, to say the least.
Well, because there's a bit of backstory. There's a little bit of backstory. So Adele Teal bought Caesar. So this is Caesar the gorilla. 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So she's had this gorilla. So she was living in a place in Leeds, right? Mm-hmm. And was displaying the gorilla on the front of a house for 15 years without issue, right?
Wow.
And then she's moved to I think it was Wakefield, and obviously I think planning inspectors, maybe some locals aren't really much of a fan of the big gorilla. I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I have to. I mean, I don't want to. Oh God, I'm gonna be proper boomer here.
Oh,
but like, you know, when people park like massive caravans and stuff in their drives, and like this huge, I often think like I need planning permission to put like a fence up outside if it's over a certain height. But you can park like a massive van or like a massive caravan or something. And like, what's the crack with that? Because do you know what it is? Adele. Oh, right. I've got some comments in. So this is intriguing. Actually, it's quite a nice little point to intersect and people to comment on nonsense of the week, because just to get people's opinion. So I've got a comment here from Mandy saying there's a house on Seaton Carew Front, a place I know quite well. Seaton Canoe. Little tidbit there. That was where the guy went missing on the canoe.
The guy who faked his own death. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, I lived around the corner in Hartlepool.
Oh wow!
What you're saying is there's a house down there with 3 gorillas on the front.
Oh,
Adele's eating her heart out there.
People of Wakefield need to get a grip then, because it could be much worse than it is. And if you've lived in Leeds for 15 years, gorilla abuse free, and then you move to Wakefield, and all of a sudden, the people of Wakefield think they're better than the people of Leeds? They're not. Listen, I'm telling you, Yorkshire's Yorkshire. If you want to put a gorilla on the front of your house, you should be welcome to do it wherever you want. 3, a bit excessive, I think. I think we should be drawing the line at a pair of gorillas, I think, in my opinion, Craig.
Oh, yeah, you know it is. I've been fretting all day about how do I really feel about the gorilla? Because I don't want to. Everyone's entitled to their fun, aren't they? But at what point does your fun encroach on other people's? I don't know what to call it, but you know, maybe
the liberty, you know, as the founding fathers of America said, liberty is a soul's right to breathe and to have a fake gorilla on the front of your house. I do think, Craig, with this, the very fact that we started this stream by saying that it was a bit of a quiet news week, and then you've racked your brains all day as to how you feel about this gorilla planning permission, maybe tells us that we were right all along. You know, I think it's maybe, I mean, it's great. It's great when it's quiet like this. I've got a comment on my Instagram stream from someone that says, I live in Leeds. I know for a fact that my kids would love to see this. So that's all the evidence I need.
Think of the kids.
Bring out the gorillas. That's all I say.
Think of the kids. That's it. I love that. I love that. I think we all need to just chill out a bit. Maybe it's maybe we need a bit more gorilla in our life.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I think it's a great way to end. A little bit lighthearted. I think that Adele Teal and Caesar the Gorilla get that's class approval.
Okay.
And I think on that, James, I think it's been pretty seamless, hopefully, for people viewing and listening on Instagram. I have noticed that Instagram dies after an hour, so that's something that we're going to have to address. So I think you've probably ticked over. I certainly did. I had to reboot my stream.
Mine's still going. Just.
Oh, well, there we go.
We'll see.
But yeah, so I think everyone who's been watching on Instagram, blast across to our YouTube. I think we're only a couple of subscribers away on YouTube from a little milestone. So it would be lovely if people listening would just give us a little subscribe. I think our the link to it is in our bios, so it'd be good if you just shoot across there and give us a subscribe. And same to be said for the Spotify listeners, the Apple Music listeners, and our Amazon, wherever you're listening. Thank you again all for tuning in, because we love doing these streams. I think they're getting slightly longer every week because I think we've got so much to get through. Man.
This is what's going to happen when we end up talking about gorillas in Wakefield for 15 minutes.
Exactly, and cranes in Manchester.
Finger on the pulse type politics responses that you just wouldn't get anywhere else. And look, I'm contracted to the BBC, contracted to Sky News. You wouldn't get it there. I can say that comfortably. We don't, they wouldn't spend this amount of airtime on issues of that importance. And I think that's why you should subscribe to That's Class.
Exactly. Love it, James. Right. Well, with no further ado, I think we'll log off and because I tell you what, I've still got a little bit of a hangover. So it's going to be an early night for me. So thank you very much. I've been Craig.
And I've been James. And this has been That's Class.
That's Class.